What is going on? I'm your host, Adam Fraser, and I welcome you to an episode of the River Run podcast. It's been a while since I've sat in front of the camera. Last week, I made an attempt to do a podcast, just kind of recapping my accident back in October. And I don't know what happened. The audio, like I said, I recorded this a couple weeks ago, and I was in a sling at the time. I am no sling right now. So no, in the end, I apologize. I also thank each and every person who was like texting me or calling me to let me know, like, hey, dude, like you got no audio going on. So thank you. And once again, my apologies. I don't know what happened. And rookie mistake. I'm not sure. But in the end, once again, thank you to everybody who reached out to me last Thursday, just being like, yo, no audio. But before we dive into my accident on the river, don't forget the fine folks over at Dubro Fishing offer listeners of the River Run 10%. So your code for that is, because Christmas is right around the corner. You never know what you might need from Dubro, so check it out. The code is capitals RRUN10, and that's save 10 at checkout. And you can visit for all your Dubro products. Check out dubrofishing.com. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little nervous about talking about this. I don't know. I haven't been nervous for a podcast since my very first one, and I'm not 100% sure how this is going to go. So bear with me. At the same time, it's I'm grateful to be here still. I'm thankful for each and every person who's reached out to me over the past couple of weeks, and kind of been like, yo, where you at? What are you doing? Why are you so quiet all of a sudden? And there's a lot of reasons why I was quiet, why there was no River Run podcast. There was really no Adam Fraser, because I'll be honest with you, and 110% is Adam Fraser just wasn't here. It was a complete freak accident. And in the end, I'm very grateful to still be here. I'm very grateful. I don't know. Like this happened October 12th, Thanksgiving weekend. And I am to this day still processing that the events that transpired that day. I don't know. It's a mind-blowing thing to have happen, but it just goes to show you that when you are out on the water, anything can happen. And don't think just because you are very experienced, or it doesn't matter, beginner to experienced or whatever, you are going to be faced with challenges. Sometimes these challenges will really define whether you walk away from it or not. So, but why don't we dive into this? So it was the morning of October 12th. I hadn't been out in like a month. And so I wanted to go hit my little piece of heaven, as I call it. This river is a river I fish in upstate New York. It's literally like a 17-minute drive from my house to the launch. And so it was Saturday morning, Thanksgiving weekend. And I got out there. It was like I left the house at like probably 5 o'clock in the morning. I had packed my trailer the night before. My wife and I actually had a date night for the first time in a long time. And it was just like any ordinary day. Like I don't know. Nothing felt different. I was so anxious and excited to get out on the water, that I couldn't get over. I was like, I had like all my rods set up. I was like, this is what I'm doing. Boom. And I'm going to work it. I'm not paddling today. I'll bring the Bite FD, which obviously I still have a paddle with me, but I was like, I'm going to go out for a couple hours, and then, we got to get back home, go Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' place. And yeah, so like I get to the launch, and I do the usual wet launch with the trailer, and it's kind of a weird launch, but you got to drive. So you're like way up on the hill, and then you got to drive down, and you got to come down to the river, and then you got to go back kind of up the hill, and then you'll back in and you'll wet launch. And this is mainly a kayak, canoe, small boats, but you won't ever catch, like a bass boat out there. Like it's not equipped for that. And I probably fished this river for like 2 years now, and it's I don't know. I'm a river smallie guy. Like to me, it's my heaven. I love being out there. It's crazy to say that because, and in the end, I get everything. I have my waders on, because it wasn't like really all that cold yet. Like the water wasn't like, to me, like dry suit weather yet, which I actually purchased a dry suit to, continue my cold water season. And with that being said, that kind of, that'll be next year. But yeah, so I get out there, and, I got my new life jacket, my new PFD, my new one that I won at the Paddle Sport Get Together, which is the NRS Odyssey. And yeah, like absolutely loved it. Like I've been rocking the same life jacket for I don't know how many years now. And so I get out there, and like it's gorgeous. Like it's fall, like the trees are like changing, the geese are flying, like you can hear the birds. Like if you're a river person, like you can really, like I love nature, because nature explains to me like how my fishing day is going to go. So like there was a lot of activity that day, and there's a lot of geese also touching down on the water and taking off. And I've seen like a kingfisher too, which was really cool. And so I get to this part in the river where there's this tree that has probably been, I don't know, must have fallen in the last week or so. Like it still had like green leaves on it. Like it wasn't like nothing was really dying on it yet, but it had let go. And let's say this tree might have been like, it was, I don't know, maybe 10 feet, if that. And it like had all of its leaves on. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to stop and I'm going to fish there. So I grabbed this finesse jig that I have. It's actually one of the Juicy Jigs. They're finesse jigs, which I've become quite a fan of. And I make a cast, and I end up kind of like going like a little too far. And so I'm like kind of reeling it in quick because I don't want to get snagged on the branch. And as I bring my my finesse jig like kind of like up, and I go over this branch, all of a sudden this smallmouth bombs out of the water, grabs my jig, and just dives with it. And I'm like, holy crap. So like I go to set the hook, but he spits it on me because he just has it by the trailer. If you haven't been out on the river in a month and you finally get a bite, like you're probably going to set that thing, as hard as you can. And that's just, pure excitement and adrenaline for the lack of, getting any bites for a month as you have not been out on the river. And so I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. So I reel it back in, and I go and I send it. But this time I kind of just send it about 2 feet in front of this down tree. And like, boom, this thing hits it. And I'm like, nice. So I set the hook. I'm like, yeah, he's hooked. and I'm using a G Loomis 852S jig and worm rod. That's like it's my go-to for like finesse jigs, any single hook presentation. That thing's got backbone. And my reel decides to just like blow up, and it's like the reverse bearings let go, and my reel's just like the line's coming out. I'm like, holy crap! Like I'm like trying to like re-spool it, and every time the fish is pulling, it's like my reel's just blowing up, and I'm like, oh my god, like So now I'm like standing on this kayak, the thing's going behind me. I go with it, and a little bump there, and yeah, so I end up getting this smallmouth in, and it's just like, oh, it's a gorgeous fish. And it even had in that kind of like black pigmentation on its fins, and which was neat to see, because I've heard a lot of that happening in cold water, and I had never actually encountered that on this river that I was fishing. So it was kind of a neat find also to know that like that's what's going on. And I still need to send an email to the people that I'm trying to think, what is it? The Catch Atlas, blotchy bass. That's essentially what it is. Every time you find one, if you want, you can send it to, there's actual like scientists who are studying it. So you can send a picture, and it just kind of lets them know like what's going on in your waterways. Like, oh, this is like a parasite, or this is like a bacteria that's going on. What's going on. So, and it was a gorgeous fish. So like I snapped a picture with it, and I sent it home, and so I kind of kept fishing. I caught a couple more, little like 13s, 14s. The biggest one that day was 18 3/4. I think I had another, like, I want to say, I didn't measure this fish. I want to say it was probably like 15, 16. And then it just kind of like got further down. So in the whole gist of this day is that I'm actually exploring a new stretch of river. So usually I would go east on this river, and I've done that for quite some time, and there's log jams all over the place, and it leads to a set of rapids, and it's phenomenal for anybody who loves to wade, or just there's steep stretches too, maybe like 10, 12 feet. And so like I said, on this day now I'm decided to go west, and I'm getting up. I want to get up to this point. And if I kind of explain it to you, is that as you go up the river curves, and then it comes back around, and there's this big bend where there's just straight white water. And so I had continued my way up the river fishing, and I had gotten into this wide opening stretch where the river kind of widened before it kind of went narrow again. And it kind of just like fluctuated all over in depth, and it was really cool. And like I just kept fishing there, and I was actually throwing like a crank, and I threw not a jerkbait, but a chatterbait for a bit. And I wasn't getting anything on that, so I just kind of went back to the finesse jig, and I ended up catching another 2 smaller guys. And then I ended up catching a nice river Cisco, I think they call it. And like that thing was like, it was absolutely gorgeous. Like the scales on it, like they're all over in the river. And from time to time, I caught them on like lipless crankbaits, chatterbaits, finesse jigs. I've even caught them on like Ned rigs. And and so I ended up hooking this one. So now I'm kind of getting into the part where I'm getting to where I want to be. And so it's absolutely gorgeous, this spot. And, there's like on the one side, you can see like, it's just trees, and this river, the banks are very steep. So you can't it's kind of hard to fish from them in certain spots because it's so steep, and then it's straight clay. So like you just like it dives like that. So it's not the easiest river to wade. There's certain stretches that you can wade. So I got to this, and I'm in my Bite FD, which I'm pedaling, and I've gotten to the part where like I can't really pedal anymore, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna wade the rest of this stretch. And like, so here I am at this spot, okay? And this is the part where this all really begins to change. This is completely unaware to what's about to happen. So I put my kayak like behind me, and I have it like a rope. And I'm beginning to cast, and I'm just casting this little crank like in the white water, just letting him dive down and like bouncing him off the rock as hard as I could. And I end up hooking a spoon, like an actual like fishing spoon, like that. I end up hooking. I do this so dropping. I hook into this spoon, okay? Now this isn't the actual spoon that I hooked in, because the actual spoon was like a big pike spoon. And I hooked the spoon, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like reeling, but like it's catching on something because it still has like the steel leader going to it. And I'm like, oh, like lovely. Like if you know me, I understand anytime you fish the river, you're gonna lose stuff, like for sure. Like, it's gonna get stuck in rocks. I've lost loads of crankbaits, chatterbaits, you name it. Like it's down there. So I was like, you know what? Like I'm not gonna throw this on the shore. So I'm like, maybe I'll pack it in, and I'm gonna now pull my kayak through the white water, and then I'll head up, continue further west. And I'm like, you know what? I threw that spoon in the front of my bite, which, it's all open. So I throw it in there, and I'm like, I'll make another couple casts. So this is where things are about to change drastically. And yeah. So I remember making like a couple more casts. And if I'm going to explain this, best is to do a diagram. And if anybody does diagrams really good in videos, it's Jeff Little, but this is my diagram. So I don't know if you can see it, but if you look, there's this tree right here. That tree is a 40-foot, 16 to 18 inch in diameter ash tree with no bark on it. Like it is hollowed out. And in the diagram, just because it's kind of hard to explain, there is my kayak, and there's the X is me. Now, remember, I'm fishing, I'm casting, so I'm facing the white water, and I have my back to the bank. Now this bank is, like I said, it's very steep, and there was trees up there, and even when I pulled up, I being vigilant, I recognized that tree. I was like, because it stood out, because there's no bark on it. Did I ever think this tree was going to come down? No. So focused on fishing, I'm making casts, and then all of a sudden I hear the snap, like wood breaking, and next thing you know, I'm waking up in the water. Now I am in the water, submerged, face down. And I'm going to say this is the weirdest experience the weirdest way to explain it, but it was the most peaceful way that I've ever woken up. I sat there, like I was like face down, and I'm probably in about 18 inches of water because I was wading, right? So I was about up to my knees or so, and I'm 6'3". And I can feel the water like rushing past me. Like I can feel the water going past my face. And I'm like opening my eyes, and I remember like touching the bottom, but I couldn't tell you like why I was in the water. What was I doing? And I kept feeling around, and I couldn't figure out. And I then remember like reaching behind me with my arm and being like, why can't I stand up? Like, why can't I get up? Well, I could feel that there was like something very large and most likely wood on pinning me into the river. And I like began, I never panicked. Like I just was like, kind of like, what the heck's going on here? You know, I'm not sure. And I'm kind of nervous about moving, but I'm like, okay. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to like more or less try and roll out from under this tree that's on top of me. And I end up getting myself out from underneath this tree, and I come up out of the water, and I'm like taking a big gasp of air, and I'm like, just like, it was quiet under the water, and now my ears are ringing, and like I'm like trying to hold myself up, and I'm stumbling throughout the water, and I get to the bank, and I literally, like, I'm not kidding, I don't even know how many times I fell into that water again, because I couldn't walk. I couldn't keep myself up. And I began to like, just, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it was just so weird. Like, I just, like, I don't know. I've never really, I don't know if I've ever really been knocked out, but like I was knocked out. Like that tree, as I sat on that bank, and I remember just sitting there and like just holding my head. And I remember I could just feel like my eyes were like burning. Like my eyes were burning. I could taste blood in my mouth. And I was like wiping my face, and I was just like, what the heck? And I remember like reaching with my hands, which then I realized I couldn't lift my left arm. And I remember feeling around on my head. I felt the back of my head, and the back of my head was like split open. And I'm like, what the hell has happened here? And I'm like, I could barely lift, like trying to lift my arm, couldn't do it. So I took my life jacket and I unzipped it, and I took my hand and I pulled it up into it. So if you think like this is your life jacket, if that makes any sense, I don't know which way I'm supposed to go, sorry. And I'm like, immobilized it, because every time I go to move this thing, like it's like just like a sharp pain. And I sit there and I'm like, and I look, and I really now realize how serious this is. Serious is because now I can see that there's, a 40-foot tree of that hard ash, that tree that had no bark on it. And it's laying, like it's down the hill. Like it is like, just like the diagram, it has left from here, and it's laid itself. And I'm like, what? Not to mention, I'm like, I just can't turn my neck. Like I'm like, and I'm really running on adrenaline at this point. And I'm like, I gotta make a decision what I'm gonna do here. Now I had been out. I don't know how long I was out for underneath the water. It's a daunting feeling to not really understand what has happened, not being able to like physically comprehend your injuries right now, because your mind has now kicked into survival mode. You're like, they call it, I don't know, fight or flight. And so, I assessed the situation, and I'm like, I still got to make it down the river like 30 minutes. Now the river always runs east, but how are you going to paddle? How are you going to pedal? Like, I don't know if you've ever had a head injury, especially a cut to the top of your head. It bleeds profusely. Like, it's impressive how much blood comes out of your head. And I'm covered in blood at this point. I'm covered from head, like literally my jacket. I was wearing a Arc'teryx Beta Gore-Tex jacket that was covered in blood. My brand new red PFD covered in blood in my face. And I have to kind of look like, what are we going to do here? And I'm like, you know what? I'm making this decision right now that I'm going to, if I stay here, I don't know, like what could happen? Like, will I lose consciousness, because of blood loss? Like, am my injuries about to, my pain's about to get worse? And I decided to pick up my gear. Now, when this tree fell, it had quite a few large limbs. And so the rod I had in my hand at that time, it's still not short enough for this room, was a Gene Loomis 822 drop shot rod. I love this rod. It's great. You know why? Because it's a mag medium. So it kind of falls into that, I don't know, I would say like having a very moderate action. So I really like to fish like small cranks and stuff on this if I'm not using it for a drop shot rod. Well, this is the rod I had in my hand. And when that tree hit me, I ended up just breaking the tip. I lost about, I had to tape it back on because I didn't want to lose it. But yeah, it had suffix braid, and that thing clearly broke. I didn't even remember after that tree hit me what I was doing. I had to literally go back and I remember looking at my kayak and like, oh yeah, and then I'm looking at the tree, and then I'm looking at the rods. And I'm like, okay, like I'm fishing. Like, that's what I'm doing. This is my 852 852S E6 X jig and worm rod. This is my finesse jig rod. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a pretty clean break there. That tree, the limbs, it smashed. That tree, I had that rod, the one rod in my hand when I was hit by the tree, and that other rod was hanging off of my kayak. And when it hit it, it literally broke that thing in half. Oddly enough, I was trying out some new line. This is a P line. TCB braid. And I'm not kidding you. The rod broke, but the line did not break. The finesse jig was still tied to a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. And the line was still intact. I was like blown away. So I end up kind of getting myself together, and I also lost that day, which sucks because I really like that hat, which was my Kayak Adventure Series hat that I had gotten from Drew Gregory. And yeah, no, when the tree hit me, I was wearing that hat. And yeah, I don't know. When I came up through the water, the hat, obviously, the tree probably took it off my head and sent it down the river. So yeah, so I ended up losing a hat. But other than that, I ended up just breaking 2 rods. Lost my new Kayak Adventure Series hat. But at the end of the day, my kayak was still intact. Everything was good. So I make this point where I'm going to now make my way back down the river. And this is kind of a strange part too, because I remember it, but like I just remember talking to myself. And so here I am in my bite, and like I got my left arm in my life jacket. I'm using my steering handle, on the side of my bike, and I'm pedaling, but at the same time, I'm keeping my hand on my head because I'm trying to, put pressure on this, excessive bleeding that's coming out of my head. And I just sat there, and I would kind of I just would talk to myself, you're gonna, you're down the river, what's that? Oh, you got a tree. Okay. Cool. Oh, do you see anybody else on the river? What day is it today? Today's October. It's the 12th, what are you doing later? And I just didn't want to lose consciousness again, because if I did, there's no telling where I would have ended up, or, well, you would end up in the St. Lawrence River, but there's another set of rapids, and then it's stretch rapids, and I just didn't want to have to, I didn't want somebody to have to come and find me later, so I damn sure just said, just keep going. And I would pedal, and the more I pedaled, obviously the more my head would bleed, and it was not a very comfortable pedal at all. And it was really hard to kind of turn myself, and I couldn't really just, do this or this. I was literally doing that whole body, you're okay. And, was there anybody out there at that time? No, I am the only person out on that river. Usually, yeah, I've only crossed people on that river at the launch. I've never physically crossed another angler, kayaker, recreational kayaker, a canoeer, you know what I mean? Or even a small boat, and I can now, we're talking 30 minutes here. So I'm not going to recite everything about 30 minutes, but it was just stay positive, stay focused. You know where you need to be, what you're going to have to do next. And it was literally building myself up to do what I had to do next, which was, when I got to the launch, I was praying that there'd be somebody there to help me load this. And so I can see the launch because there's a dock at the launch, and I'm and there was just this sigh of relief that just came over me, and I I don't even know. Like I remember I don't even know like what I was thinking. I just knew that I couldn't be. I knew I needed to get help. Like I was like, you can't stay on the river. You got to get off the river. Like you're injured. You have a chance that you've lost enough blood that you could lose consciousness. Your injuries. The pain is just getting worse, and you've taken a severe hit to the head. Like that tree literally caught me in the back of the head. So um, I get out of that kayak, I dump it on the shore right at the launch, and I'm like, I'm going to go get my trailer. And I tell you, I stormed up that hill. And I was like, I didn't know how much time I got. I was just like, we gotta get this going. Like, I need to go. And I was like, I'm gonna call my wife and I'm gonna tell her that I need her to meet me at the border. So I was like, I have insurance. Every time I go to the States, I always have insurance. But this, I just knew that it would be easier for me to go to the hospital back in Cornwall. And that's the plan. I stuck with it. Am I right for that? I don't know. Am I wrong for that? I don't know. Like, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? So I literally walk up that hill, get into my car, which is my journey, and I drive down, and I don't know if anybody who has a trailer, like you usually got to turn around, to back it up. Yeah, I couldn't turn myself. I couldn't physically like stretch myself back to look at it. And it's already kind of a tricky launch, but so I just kind of did this all, looking in the mirror, like I'd look in my rear view, look at my side views, and I was like, oh, and it, like, I don't know, like I probably said the F word 1,600 times. I was getting frustrated with myself, and I was just like, like, you're going to get this, got to get this, got to get this, got to get this, stay positive, and I finally get it like close enough, and I put the vehicle in park. I put the parking brake on, and I get out, and I'm like, oh, now I still got to lift this thing. I'm like, I still got to get it up and onto it. So I have like a 10, I think it's like 10 to 12 foot, like heavy duty rope on the front of the kayak. And I use it as like, it has like a carabiner on it on one end and on the other. And I'll tie it to my waist when I'm waiting, or I'll use it when I'm wet launching. So I can just kind of send my kayak out, and then I can just pull it over to the launch. And I just kept trying and trying and trying. And I just couldn't get this stupid kayak to go on the trailer, which is such an easy thing to do with two hands. So I just kind of finally got this thing on, and with one hand, I decide, and I just lift and I pulled this thing, and then I went to the other end and I lifted even more and I pushed it up on, and that just about took all the energy I had out of me. But I still had to tie this thing down. I took all the gear out of it, literally threw it in the back of my journey, like broken rods, just there you go, like net, there you go, paddles, like just everything. I left my backpack in the back of my tray on the back of the kayak. It's strapped down anyways. And yeah, like, I don't know, like it was just like, I don't know what was going on. So I take a rope, that rope that I have, and I like began to like loop it around on my trailer. I have racks, and those racks have like a cargo carrier on it, and it also has another set of bunks up on the top, so I can take like 2 kayaks at once. So I tied my my rope around that, and I was like, I'm not tying down my kayak. I'm not physically strapping down my kayak. I'm going to tie down my kayak. And yeah, I get on the phone and I call my wife, who's with my daughter. I don't know where they were exactly. I think they were out doing errands. And I'm like, hey, like, I need you to meet me at the border. So I've been in an accident and I need you to take me to the hospital. So she goes, okay. And just a side note here that my wife is she works at the Cornwall Community Hospital. She is a emerge nurse. She deals with, everything. And so I was like, you know what? So I get onto the road because I get back onto the highway, and I'm like driving, got my four ways on. I'm not speeding. Like, I'm just taking it easy. And then so I'm like, okay, like, just stay focused. Like, you stop losing. Don't lose any consciousness. Just stay focused on what you have to do. And Adam, drive it to the Canadian border. Let's go. So that's what I did. I drove my car with one arm, in my life jacket still. Didn't take off any of my gear. I was completely soaked. And I get to so you got to go, like, you go past the American border, you go up over the bridge, you go down into Cornwall Island. Across Cornwall Island I go, and I'm on the bridge, and I'm like, oh my God, there is a lineup, right? Because it's Thanksgiving weekend in Canada, October 12th. And there's a lineup. And all of a sudden, so you got to pay a toll to cross the bridge both ways. So I see her, and then I see her do she whips a U-E, and she goes into the center lane, which is another gate which opens, and she goes. So I'm like, okay, like that's where I need to be. So I drive up, and I'm like, I say, hey, like, I need medical attention. And the girl goes, yeah. And I do my thing. She opens it up. I drive through, and then I see at the Cornwall crossing, there's like your internet, like, coming from like the US line, and then there's like also domestic travel from the island. So she's in the domestic travel for the island. So I bring my car over, and once you go through the center lane, like, everything kind of like opens up. And I'm like, like, I'm almost there. Like, I'm good. I can do this, and I pull up to the border, and this border guard's looking at me like, what the hell happened to you? And I'm like, here's my passport. I said, I need medical attention. I've been hit by a tree. And he goes, like, you hit by a tree? And I was like, yeah, like, I took a full on tree to hit, like, caught me in the back of the head. And they're like, okay, like, don't, like, just like pull forward a bit, And so my wife comes walking over, and now she's looking at me, and she's, and, out comes, like, another 10 border guards, and which were all very helpful. And they're like, holy shit, like, they're like, what happened? And I said, like, I was out on the river fishing. I was waiting, and, I was hit by a tree. And so my wife's like, don't move, like, stay in the car. And they're like, they're calling an ambulance for you right now. So I sat there waiting, and, like, I was like, it kind of freaked me out a bit, and they're like, don't move, like, and my wife, she's a medical professional. So, like, she knows, she knows how the body works and how the body responds. And so now the lane for the domestic travel is closed, and they're rerouting everybody through the other ones. And then I can, I have this hat, I have this hat sitting on the front of my car. It's like one of my favorite hats, but it's by Live Rough, Die Tough. He's like just a clothing guy down in, I think it's like West Virginia. Super cool dude. But yeah, and this border guard's like looking, he's like, man, you're like, you're living by that right now. And I'm like, no, like, I'm like, I'm like, yeah, like I just need to get back to Canada. Like that's, I don't know. I think I've said that 100 times. And they kept saying like, like you got hit by a tree. Like, how do you get hit by a tree? And I'm like, well, they're like, you're in your kayak and you got hit by a tree. And I'm like, yeah, like, and like, people are just like, like, and so finally the like emergency services show up and, I'm like, they're, the neck brace goes on. And so now I got to like skip down into my skimmies because I'm full of water in my waders and saturated blood and it's October, so it's not really the warmest time of year. And so like they're like, yeah, we're gonna get you like out of this gear and they're going to put you on a stretcher. So they pretty well like lugged me out of that car, flattened me down into the stretcher, and got all my stuff off. I actually managed not to have to cut my very favorite Arc'teryx jacket or my new life jacket. It was all able to come off, which I was super happy about. But if they had to do it, they had to do it. And yeah, so I ended up taking, there was a EMS, there's an ambulance and then there's an EMS SUV that was there too, as they were like getting me ready for transport. And, I would say probably the one thing that scared me the most, and I would say is when my daughter had asked to see me, because remember my wife and my daughter were together, and it was, my daughter asked, can I see dad? And, if there's one thing you don't want to, is scare your kids, right? Like it's, and having that look on my daughter's face of sheer, yeah, that broke my heart a bit. I didn't want her to be scared, that was the one thing that I didn't want, so as one of those people, you have to remain tough. Not tough, but you gotta be strong. You gotta stay strong. You gotta stay mentally focused, So, I said, don't worry. And, we got into the ambulance and on the stretcher into the ambulance, and here I go. And, I do want to say, that it's weird. I don't know. It's just weird to process all this. Like it doesn't make sense half the time, like how, like you're in line, like, so, in the end, I get to the hospital. So we're at the hospital, Cornwall emergency, this is where my wife works. So, everybody's probably like, what the hell is she doing here on her day off? And yet it's her husband who's brought her to the emergency on her day off. Classic husband move. I don't know. But the folks over there at the Cornwall Community Hospital in the emergency department, I forget the doctor's name that day. He was fantastic. All the nurses there, Andrew, D-Man, I'm forgetting Bailey. I'm forgetting names, but man, there's so many people who are just, at the same time, helping my wife, helping me. And so, there's a lot of things that, a lot of tests that I had to go through, a lot of x-rays, a lot of CT scans. So first of all, they had to, put my head back together, and so they did that right away, and that did not feel good. But yeah, it was, and I had to go for an X-ray of my shoulder because I couldn't lift my arm, and like I was in immense pain. And they kept like offering me like, you want like fentanyl, you want this, you need that. And I'm just like, nope. Like I am not doing this. Like I'll just take the Advil and Tylenol. And then finally they gave me, I think they gave me morphine or something. And I would like just kind of took the pain away. And so the doctor comes and is like, you broke your scapula. And I'm like, I don't know what your scapula is. You know what your scapula is? Your scapula is your shoulder blade. It's a big bone like this in your back, right? And it does this, it moves, and so to be able to do this, I couldn't do it. I can't. That's the arm. So I couldn't lift my arm. And every time I felt it, why? Because I had broken my scapula, my shoulder blade. So the thing about breaking your scapula or your shoulder blade is it takes a high impact. That's usually something seen more in like a car accident or somebody falling or taking an excessive blow. Now, I had taken a blow to the back of my head. I had taken a blow to my back, to my scapula, my back, like that tree hit me, boom, flattened me instantly, knocked out like a UFC fighter, And so now I need to go for more x-rays because what's happening now is that, if you've taken a blow this way, you got to think your rib cage, your sternum, everything else, it's the cage to, you got your lungs, you got your heart, you got all that. Like that's a pretty serious thing to hit. And so it was a couple hours. We're waiting. And at the same time, the doctor is like, I'd like you to, take off, your neck brace. I want you to try, because we determined that, everything, like I did not manage to fracture my skull nor have a bleed in my brain. But every time I turned my neck, whether it was right or left, my fingers would go numb. And I just so he said, try. And I'll be honest with you, I even tried to lift my head off that bed. I could not lift my head off that bed. I felt like my head was, I don't know, like it was such a weird pain. And so he comes back after, more x-rays and whatnot. And he says that, you have compression fractures in your thoracic. It's your T-spine. So you got your C-spine, I think, your T-spine, which is like here, your mid-spine, and then your lumbar. So I have compression fractures in my T-spine. That's from most likely the tree hitting my head and literally my spine just bonking down. It's a force of impact. So now it's like, do you need surgery, for your injuries? And after some, I guess between consultations with some other doctors or whatever, he determines that, no, your injuries should heal on their own. You don't need any surgery. You're definitely going to need, this, that. You're going to need, come your time, you're going to need a lot of physio. So I go home after being in the hospital, and I don't know. I've never had it. I don't know. I've never had a confirmed concussion in my life. I've hit my head snowboarding. I wiped out, hit my head skateboarding, hit my head mountain biking, BMXing, bumped my head at work, got a hard hat on. this concussion had to be the most daunting experience of it all. I don't know if you've ever experienced a concussion, but deemed this one pretty severe. I was not Adam Pross. I didn't feel like Adam Pross. I was here, and so, going home also with your arm in a sling, which is like a shoulder immobilizer. And so it has a strap to hold your arm up, goes over, and then it has another strap which immobilizes your arm from moving. And, it was not a fun experience. I wasn't allowed screen time other than an hour a day. You use that up pretty quick when you are either answering a phone call or whatnot. And it was honestly, it was crippling. Like there was nothing fun about this. There was nothing enjoyable at all. Like it was, like just light sound, ringing in my ears constantly, headaches, like the pain in my head. Oh, I think for 3 days, I think I felt like my whole skull was ripping out of my, like just being pulled. Like there was just like my brain and my skull were coming apart. And that wasn't a good place to be. I think at the same time, I just wished, the amount of pain, because I was told by the doctor the next days to come, you were going to feel even more pain. And I don't know if you've taken a severe blow to your body, but your body hurts in the weirdest places. Like, I won't lie, like my esophagus hurt to swallow, to drink food. You know what I mean? Like it hurt my chest. My compression fractures, it was kind of weird because I couldn't, like, if I turned a certain way, I'd feel it, but like Adam wasn't turning a certain way to feel it because, my scapula, it was, that was painful. My neck, give yourself some pretty severe whiplash too. But there's a lot of stuff going on between your scapula, your spine, and your neck, right? A lot of muscles there. And so over the past, couple weeks, since, October the 12th, I've been doing a lot of, well, first of all, I wasn't able to do any rehabilitation for my injuries because I needed my injuries to heal. So I went, as you saw the last time, I was in a sling. I was in a sling for about 7 weeks. And starting this week, I will begin rehabilitation for my scapula. I am still waiting on an MRI for my head, spine, trauma. But if you're a welder, you can't have any metal in your eye. So I have to go for x-rays for that. So we're still waiting on that. But through this whole process, I have learned so much about concussions. I have learned so many things. And, there was, I was told, for 2 weeks, you were not to do anything. Like you were pretty well going to be, you were to take it easy. You were to rest, And I felt like I probably first week probably just slept and, slept, pain medication. I couldn't, I'd take, and like the nausea from the concussion. Oh, like I don't know how to explain it. It is the grossest feeling. Like I don't know how to explain it other than it's a really gross, nauseating feeling. And so I had actually ended up, the doctor had just given me a recommendation to go to the, which is called Concussion 360, which is up in Ottawa, and that being said, I actually took part in concussion research to help them understand. I also had done concussion physiotherapy, and it was mind blowing at how much I was learning. And like, it was, simple things, and the big thing that I learned is, the more physically active you get with a concussion, the better you are in the long run of recovery, because you need to get that blood flow going to the brain. Like, a concussion is like seriously an invisible injury. Like, it'll never come up like on any medical like x-ray, or I keep hitting the mic, sorry. See, like, it's not going to come up there. Like, you can't, like, unless you've actually been hit in the head hard enough to feel your brain. I didn't feel anything when that tree hit me. But just to have such a severe blow to the head, you rattled your brain. And, so I became, after, my appointments with the physio, and then I started doing physio in town for my concussion, and balance was a huge thing. Like, if I closed my eyes and I had to walk, like do a sobriety test, like walk the line, I couldn't do it. I looked like I drank like a 2-4. Like, I was all over the place. It was scary. Like, I had zero balance, I felt like. But the more I started, doing a lot of cardio, especially on a spin bike. And I started, doing, I was probably doing close to like 15 kilometers a day on a spin bike. And I started getting more active and more active. And, we had, there's always appointments, but, and this concussion physiotherapy, I tell you, if you ever, and I would wish this upon nobody ever. Sadly, it does happen all the time, but head injuries, if you ever experience a head injury and, you don't feel like yourself, you don't have to suffer alone, like there's a lot of our like health benefits and whatnot cover concussion physiotherapy, and you'd be surprised how much it helps. The daunting thing about concussions is a lot of times what you are told, when you go to the hospital, unfortunately, is that, you need to like not do anything, which I'm not a medical professional. So I'm just going to tell you my experience is that by doing stuff, it later on, I tell you, I came back a lot quicker, I would say, from my concussion, based on the fact that I was becoming more physically active, getting my blood flow going, eating again, and eating, like, getting those omegas going. It was, it was quite a process to learn. And, so, at the end of it all, I thank each and every person who's reached out to me. I'm forever grateful for each and every one of you. I'm forever grateful for my family, my in-laws, Steve and Janet, my parents, Boris and Sandra, family and friends, brothers and sisters, my kids, like they're, I don't know. It's crazy. You take for granted such simple things as like going to watch your kids play hockey, or, being able to do stuff, that was like, couldn't do it. I physically couldn't do it. And, I also wanted to just give a shout out to the Canadian Border Services over at the Cornwall port of entry. I didn't catch your names. I I just want to say thank you so much. You guys' quick action, quick thinking, to me that meant the world. So, and yeah, it's I'm forever grateful for that. Cornwall emergency services, ambulance, thank you. You guys, thank you. That was probably the wildest ambulance ride yet, but you guys did an amazing job. And the Cornwall emergency department. I forget the doctor's name that was working that day. If you hear this, who's talking about you. But yeah, no, everybody there. Thank you. Thank you so much for, helping me, helping my wife, and at the same time, supporting her, that's, you support her, you support me. So yeah. And at the end of it all, the river runs, the River Run podcast is not going anywhere. The River Run podcast will be here, just like, it just, will there be more episodes this year? I'm not sure yet. Okay. But moving into 2025, we'll be there. I still have, I've been off work since this accident in October. And I thank the guys over too, for all the support at work, at the Farm Boys group, and the family at Paddle and Fin. You guys make me feel like family, and I really appreciate that. And I'm so grateful for each and every one of you, and I'm just grateful to be here. Because that day could have gone the complete opposite, sadly from what I've been told and what people have shared with me, the outcome is not always as lucky as mine. And, does it change my kayaking? No. Do I still love river smallmouth? Yes, of course. Do I wish I could get back out there and keep fishing? 110%. But as for that, for this year, this is where I end it. This is where, I'll get back out there. I'll get back out there again next year. I'll probably fish the exact same river, because I'm a river guy. Like I live in the current. I love it. I love chasing river smallmouth. And, I don't know if you ever, to whoever that guardian angel was that woke me up that day, or that smallmouth that came and splashed me in the face, with his tail, big 23-inch, if it was that, thank you. I respect that river a lot. I respect that river in more ways that, I take care of it. I'm that guy who's out there, picking up trash. And if I'm floating down the river and I see, Gatorade bottle or whatever, I scoop it up in my net and I throw it in my kayak. And so I don't know. I don't know if it's good karma, but I'm still here. I'm still kicking it. I got some stuff I got to do, gotta get through some rehabilitation. At least I'm out of my sling, I'm pretty happy about that. So, but for now, feels good to talk about it. And you can reach out anytime, if you had it and hey, if you had a river accident story that you want to share, please do. I'd love to hear it. And also, I just want to say thank you to all the guests who I had lined up. And like my wife was majority of the time was the one handling it a lot. Like she reached out to, Brian Schiller for me. She reached out to like a lot of my guests who were just like, hey, like he's not going to be able to record this right now. So like, thank you. And you were all amazing and so understanding. And I'm so thankful for that. My wife who was answering my messages and, the team, the phone calls from, Jay Brown to Steve Ite and Dustin Nichols and, thank you. There's a lot of people here who, you made me feel good, and I appreciate that. So, but yeah, no. As for the river run, we're not going anywhere. We're just going to take a quick little break because I just need to get through a couple things, and we'll most likely be back in 2025, ready to rock it with more guests from all over the country and all over the States. Hey, if you want to get on the show, let me know. But don't forget, Paddle and Fin has shows every night of the week, and you can check out their library of great episodes from years ago to now in the present. Once again, my name is Adam Fraser, and I thank you for watching the River Run podcast. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care. Until the next time.